What's up, everyone? If you remember some time back, I put together this vertical vivarium. It is for my Arboreal Salamanders. It is an Exoterra. I believe the dimensions are 18 by 18 by 24 tall. It sits on an Exoterra stand. Really this was the first Exoterra I actually ever worked with, so I really enjoyed it. Doing the build, especially for an arboreal species. It's really easy to put the Mist King in. As you can see, I have a double nozzle right here. And then here on top, I've got one of these NiCrew lights, which I have on almost every one of my setups, which is the right spectrum for plant growth. And I also added this plastic in the back to help facilitate more humid conditions for moss. That said, while I like this, it's not great. A lot of water builds up in this because there's just a little too much moisture, so I have to constantly drain. As you can see here, actually I can't because it's dark back here, but that's where I drain my false bottom into a bucket under there in the stand in the cabinet. You don't see it, it's nice and tidy. But this one turned out okay, but not great, not my finest hour. There's a lot of bare spots that just didn't take off. A little bit of a glare here, but as you can see on the fabric, and some moss is growing, some's died. And overall, it's okay. It's like I said, I think it's a decent build. It hasn't performed exactly how I want. As you can see, that's one of the Arboreal Salamanders. Unfortunately, they've grown very fast, or fortunately, I guess they're all in really good health, but I believe they must be territorial because this one's always up in the corner and the other two seem to always have the best hiding spots in here. So I feel bad. And the other problem is, you can't see here, is this kind of glare. No matter how I film it with what camera, there's too much water buildup. Anyways, I really think it's about time I find a new vivarium for them, and here it is. This is the same footprint but much taller, 36 inches tall. This is a Zoomed. It's actually a paludarium. Here it is, right here. I bought this thing, it was about 200 bucks. So I really am excited about this because it is going to give a lot more vertical space for the animals to hide, crawl around in, have their own little areas so they're not on top of each other. And it will fit on the same cabinet as the other one, so I can just literally replace it. So, as you can see, it's just one door, there's no double door, it's just one door as opposed to the Exoterra. It's still got a screen top. Pretty similar. It's kind of weird because it is a paludarium, and I like that for a paludarium, which is cool. I kind of want to use it for that, but this just works perfectly for what I want to do. So without further ado, I would like to start by drilling the false bottom. And when I say drill the false bottom, I mean drill a place for the false bottom to drain. So what I'm going to use is a diamond bit hole saw. I'm going to use this 1/2 inch drill bit right here. Put it in the drill. And this is going to create a hole in the glass where I can put in a plastic stopper. I don't know what else to call it. It's a plug. I got it from a company called US Plastics. I had to order it directly from their website. You have to buy it in bulk. Actually, I think this might be my last one. This is where I will drain the water so there's no anaerobic conditions. So as you can see, I've started to drill a hole. I used some duck seal putty. I taped it, put some water there to make sure I'm not burning through it. As you can see, the duck seal putty didn't work well, so I'm just going to kind of get rid of that and keep drilling. And you will see what it looks like. It's a little blurry here. Let me focus a little bit better, but yeah, as you can see, that's what it looks like as you drill. I kind of drill a little bit at a time, only because the drill is a little bit dull, the bit is. So as you can see, I did the hole, and this is the stopper I was talking about. I cleaned the hole out a little bit with some rubbing alcohol, and you just kind of press it on in there. Just there it is, and it will basically stop the water from coming out. See, it's popped in there now. And so this is how I basically drain any false bottom that I have now. And I've probably said this a bunch of times, but I got this idea from Serpa Design, or Tanner Serpa. He had a really good idea to do this, and then he puts an airflow valve with a little piece of tubing on the end of it, as you can see. Airline tubing. It's a 1/4 inch tubing. It's just this stuff, and I use a razor blade, and I put it on there, and I just cut it, and you just kind of have to wiggle it on. It takes a little bit of time, but it basically, what that does is it keeps it nice and snug in there, and that's the razor blade. And like I said, Tanner Serpa did this, and so I borrowed this idea from him because it's a really smart way to do this. And you just kind of press it in, and that's about it. And then you can control the flow. Sorry, my finger's in the way. I'm trying to get the camera down there. Just by, screwing it, and it controls the water to come in and out. So it's a really smart way to go ahead and empty your false bottom. All right, so what we have here is a crate plastic Plescolate or whatever it's called from Home Depot. I always forget the name, but it's got to measure these pieces, and I use these little wire cutters here to cut these to the correct length, or height and width. Just use a tape measure. It's pretty easy. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm just measuring how deep it needs to go. In this case, I think it needs to go to 17 inches. And then basically you just snip away. It's kind of the boring part of making these, but a very important part, because this is the skeleton of the structure. So it's very important to kind of get this right and make sure that it all fits perfectly. And you can always adjust, but it's better to measure twice and cut once. So as you can see, I just I haven't siliconed it in, but I measured and I cut pieces for all the sides and the background. And I will go ahead and put these in. Use silicone. I'm just using some basic, I don't know what I picked up here, some GE silicone 1, I think, or whatever it is, just the clear. And so this is the silicone on. This is kind of just how I do it. I usually don't show all this. And then really just pretty simply, it's a lot easier than a lot of people think. You literally, as soon as you put it on there, it basically just sticks. You don't have to press something or put anything on it. You just need to put it up against it. Wear some gloves. You don't want to get this stuff on your hands. I mean, you can, but it's just a pain to get off. And then, as you can see on the bottom, there's some space. But I just press it in, and it just will cure. It doesn't take long, a couple hours, and it's basically done. And then so I'm just gonna did the sides, get that, and there you go. That's the basic structure of any of my builds right now is like this. And I'm leaving space on the sides, especially on this side, for the door to close. I don't want to have any background or stuff that I build up there. I'm just going to leave them open. On the bottom there's some space because again I'm going to have a false bottom. There's no need to have plastic all around the bottom. And then so thinking about the hardscape, this is again going to be totally arboreal. So I've picked up quite a bit of cork bark. I've baked most of this, I don't know, I think maybe at like 300 degrees for like an hour or something. My whole house smelled like cork bark. It was pretty gross. My wife was like, what the heck are you doing? But just to sterilize it. I've actually used it without doing that and it's been fine. I've never had any problems, but better safe than sorry, so I did it. Kind of a pain. I have 2 ovens, luckily, so I was able to do it all at once. But look how big this piece is. It's massive. It's going to probably be the centerpiece or one of the main pieces for this now. So just going to have to play around with it and figure out how we, where we put things. Another interesting thing that I do when I build, I wanted to show you all, is I put this on a dolly. And it just makes the background and the sides easier to do. All I have to do is flip it around and put it back on the dolly, and it is pretty simple. So this is just another little trick of the trade I use when I'm building my backgrounds. So what I'm going to do is start to figure out how I want to make this background. I'm going to use some of that styrofoam you see. I'm going to use this Great Stuff Pond and Stone. Don't forget to wear your gloves. Hello. And maybe some egg crate light diffuser, this crisscross plastic stuff. Basically, I'm going to try to build up some ledges and things like that, just so the branches are propped up a little bit. Not necessarily ledges you will see, but these are just some of the other tools: needle nose pliers, box cutters, rubbing alcohol, paper towels, things like that. So I've broken up the styrofoam here, and I am going to foam around this to build up a ledge so the branches are not going straight down, but at an angle a little bit. I don't want it to be a complete vertical drop. I'm just going to foam all around this to seal this stuff in. It's just better than trying to use all foam. You don't want to waste it. It's expensive. So as you can see, it looks like I don't really know what that looks like. It looks just like a weird alien thing. But anyways, I'm also building up on the side some more of the Acrate light diffuser here. I've siliconed it down just a couple places to give a little bit of depth to the branches when they're coming down. They're all going to kind of look vertical, but just to give you an idea, it'll be something like, the branch will essentially lay on that like that, so it's off a little bit off the background and going at a slight angle. So that's just kind of what I'm going for here. It's just, this is the hardest part of the build, is really just making the background and just figuring out what I want to do. And this is me actually making the background. I don't normally show this stuff because it's very time consuming, so here's just some time lapse of me really just being indecisive and switching, listening to different podcasts and things as I build. So, but it starts to come to take shape. You start to get into a groove, and it is fun. It just takes a while, but as you can see, I'm making it look like a tree, which is the whole point of this. So I wanted this to look more like a tree. I wanted a lot less rocks and a lot more cork bark and driftwood and branches and things like that, because I just felt that was more appropriate than the other enclosure, the current enclosure I have the animals in now. So just using the foam, just kind of piecing in pieces of wood where I think it makes sense, even some overlapping to give it some more depth. I'm using some branches, as you can see. I'm using a dumbbell to hold up some of the weight there. Now that I have most of this foamed in, what I'm going to do is use this wire brush drill bit here to carve the foam, the exposed areas of foam. This is going to be really helpful and a lot more time efficient than sitting there with like a little razor blade and trying to carve everything out. So I will just go ahead and carve anywhere where I see black foam, because you don't want it to be shiny. You want it all to be down so that you can, whatever you put on it, whether it be paint or dry lock or anything else, and then don't forget the vacuum will adhere to it. And so as you can see, this is kind of the finished product. It's all carved out. It takes a while, even with the wire brush drill bit, it can take a while. So you can see I didn't do a perfect job. There's some spots I'll have to go back and carve a little bit. But for the most part, it's pretty decent. A lot of the stuff towards the bottom I care less about because a lot of substrate's going to be over it. But you just want to make it nice and neat, and don't forget to vacuum everything out. I know I mentioned it and you saw me doing it, but I probably vacuumed 20 times to get all the debris out and everything like that. Another thing you can do is wet it down, but I really like to use the vacuum, and I think that's the easiest way to get this stuff out. I find when I wet the stuff down, some of the stuff gets stuck in the crevices. But anyways, got the old stand, the old tank off, put the new one on, added the Mist King, fits nicely, and it fits perfectly on the stand, which obviously it should since it's the same footprint. But look at that, this looks a lot cooler than what I had before, especially for Arboreal Salamanders. I mean, they really need a lot of places to hide. This one gives them an extra foot, over a foot of height. And so let's start with the drainage layer. This is just hydro balls or hydroton. I think I ordered it on Amazon. I forget. It's cheaper to order it. I get a huge bag versus going to a pet store. And I'm just rinsing it out a little bit just because it's really dusty. And then just pouring it into the tank here. And I'm going to build up a couple of inches on the bottom, so I'm going to have to do this several times. And then so I got a couple inches down, and then I put a window screen down, which will just cover the hydro balls or hydroton, whatever you want to call it. So no substrate gets in, and just a little bit more on the sides, just so not a ton of substrate gets in, because that happens a lot of times. It's going to happen no matter what a little bit, but anyways, this is the substrate. I put a lot in. This is, as you can see there, this substrate, so there's about 4 inches in the front, 6 to 7 inches in the back. This is just some bark chips, coconut fiber, sphagnum moss, Reptisoil, some activated carbon or some smashed charcoal, really is what it is, wood charcoal, and I just get it nice and moist, not wet at all, but just kind of fluffy, and that's it. And so now what I'm doing is I'm adding some more branches, like as you put one in there, just kind of fit, so it looks kind of cool. and just adding some more hardscape things. I put one of the pieces of driftwood from the tank, which had some moss and liverworts growing on it. I'm putting some of these rocks in, which I sterilized. These are just landscaping rocks I smashed up with a hammer. And again, the whole point of this was to give them more space. So I want to give them more hides. I don't, the rocks in the front, I don't know how realistic that looks, but I think it looks okay. I'm going to cover a lot of it with moss, just like I'm doing with the background here in liverworts. A lot of this is just a lot of the plants from their old tank. But I think it looks pretty good. I don't want to overdo it with moss because I don't want all the stuff to be hidden, but I do have some vines, like some creeping fig and some things like that. I have some of the old plants I took out and I planted in here, so it's going to be pretty heavily planted. Like I said, I put a lot of moss in, so some leaf litter. Those are oak leaves and some, I think, poplar. I don't know what else there is, but there's a couple different types of sterilized leaves I have that I collect from my mountain house and let dry. And there's Syngonium, Podophyllum, there's some Peperonia and some bird's nest ferns, things like that. So I'm just going to let that stuff grow. Don't forget to add your cleanup crew, which are springtails. I've put isopods in this stuff and they just disappear. I don't know if the animals eat them or they just die, but I have a lot better luck with just using just springtails. And actually wild caught isopods if you have them for a couple of generations, but the dwarf white ones I put in, I never find them. I never even see them. I don't think the temperature's right because the salamanders like a little cooler. But anyways, putting these springtails in. I'm not sure if you can see these here, but these are tempered springtails and they seem to do well. And this is like one of my master culture. I just put some dry rice in there and it gets mold and these guys eat it. Add some water, vent it out every week, and you will have a lifelong supply of springtails. Show you these. If you can see them, they're really, really small. Let's see if you can see them here crawling. Yep, you can kind of see them crawling around there, little guys. So, anyways, we're gonna give it a couple days. I'm gonna get salamanders in, and we will go from there. All right, so let's get these guys in. As you can see, the last time I showed you these salamanders, they were pretty small. They were babies. They are pretty big units now, and that one's a chunk. And let's see, there's a smaller one right there, in the middle. So they are all pretty big, honestly, at this point. And I'm really looking forward to getting them into this new enclosure. So let's do it. Put this small one in first. Give him first dibs on place to hide. Such a cool animals. They're always out at night. I never see them in the daytime, except for one because I think they were running out of space. So put them in here. Always wear gloves, if you can, or else have your hands wet. Just remember that, because most of these salamanders breathe through their skin, and even if they don't, they drink through their skin. You never see a salamander lapping up water like a dog, do you? So you always got to be careful. Just always take precautions with them. So let me see if this one wants to go under these rocks here. I'm just curious, and he does. So that's awesome. I just know that big one's going to beeline for the back corner, and I don't want them to be any kind of territorial spats. So let's see. I'll put this medium-sized one in. Let's see. Again, such cool coloration. I mean, you can see how big these salamanders got since a year and a half or however long I've had them at this point. So this one in. So cool. I love watching them. It's a treat. Otherwise I have to stay up late and wait for them to come out and look at them with a flashlight. So looks like he's gonna try to go up into one of the logs, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what he's doing. He's probably trying to figure out up from down right now. And I will put this last one in. This one's huge. And this one's actually gotten bit. You can see around the neck. It's like a white spot where it's healing. I don't know if it's a mating thing or if it's a territorial thing, but I think it could be both. It just depends. But anyways, let that one go. That's a wrap for this one. I appreciate everyone tuning in for this DIY build for these Arboreal Salamanders. And if you haven't, like, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned for some great new content. Appreciate everyone tuning in.